Mrs. Ruth Whitfield was my mother. She was literally and figuratively the heartbeat of our family and my father's soulmate for 68 years. She was the person who held us together, probably just like your mothers did for your families. What I loved most about her was the way she loved her family unconditionally, sacrificing everything for us. She visited my father at the nursing home where he's lived for the past 8 years almost every day, including on the day she was murdered, to ensure that he got the care that he needed from the nursing home and to supplement that care with their own personal and loving touch. Our lives are forever changed, forever damaged by an act of profound hate and evil. And nothing will ever take away the hurt, the pain, or the hole in our hearts. For her to be murdered, taken away from us by someone so full of hate, is impossible to understand and even harder to live with. But we're more than hurt. We're angry. We're mad as hell because this should have never happened. We're good citizens, good people. We believe in God. We trust in God. But this wasn't an act of God. This was an act of a person. And he did not act alone. He was radicalized by white supremacists. His anger and hatred were metastasized like a cancer by people with big microphones in high places screaming that black people were going to take away their jobs and opportunities.
I mean, it's the saddest, most predictable result from doing that all day, every day. This man, he lost his mom. His mom was married to his father for 68 years. For the last 8, his dad has lived in a nursing home, and his mother goes first. Because of a single white supremacist's a desire to shoot black people. A guy from Conklin, New York, who doesn't even have black people in his town, had to drive hours to find black people because black people were replacing him. What? It makes no sense because it's nonsense. It's something that is promoted by people who want ratings. It is something that is promoted by people who want power. It is something that is promoted to keep the base of the Republican Party happy and sated. You know that today there was a gunman near Brett Kavanaugh's home, and he was going to hunt Brett Kavanaugh. Yes, the Supreme Court Justice, Brett Kavanaugh, who believes everyone ought to have any weapon they want at their fingertips with no training and no permits and no licensing and no, supervision and no armories around and no police notification that, hey, this guy over here, he's got 59 weapons and 50,000 rounds. No, Brett Kavanaugh thinks that's just fine. And now some guy who was suicidal and thought, I'm going to make my life count for something, decides that he's going to go to Brett Kavanaugh's home, just like the other guy went to the judge's home in Wisconsin, and he was going to kill Brett Kavanaugh with a gun so that maybe the gun laws wouldn't get loosened. And he thought because he was going to do that and then take his own life, he could make his life worth something. What kind of country do we want in the 21st century? I don't want that. And the Supreme Court's going to dump another gun decision on us sometime at the end of this month. They're also going to dump some sort of an abortion decision on us. And tomorrow would be a very opportune day, or the next day would be a very opportune day. Why? Because we're about to have hearings about an insurrection, a violent insurrection that happened at the Capitol to overthrow our government, to literally end democracy in the United States of America. So if you didn't want people to watch that, and obviously the right wing doesn't want that, because Fox News isn't even going to broadcast it, something that has never happened before in the history of the United States. An attempt to violently overthrow our government. Can you imagine if DC didn't have the kind of gun laws that DC has? What that would have looked like? The carnage that would have... I mean, you know, we're sitting here going, well, so what? 4 or 5 people died. Who cares? Well, tomorrow night, in prime time, you probably will hear a testimony from one of the police officers, a woman, who was right at the front line there, and she was trying to keep these violent protesters out of the Capitol and on the other side of the bicycle fence. And they pushed her so hard that she fell on her head, and she now suffers from a traumatic brain injury. So you're going to start to hear testimony, and they're going to start to show you the story of what this nasty white underbelly of American society is up to. And I want to show you something right now. The reason why we have minority rule in this country is because, for instance, yesterday we had primaries, right? We had primaries in 7 different states. Primaries for everything, from governor to a recall election of a sort of a soft district attorney who didn't want to prosecute people for crimes, didn't want to prosecute people for defecating on the street, didn't want to prosecute people for selling drugs to each other, for meth, for heroin. He just didn't believe in it. He was a radical, and he was the son of radicals, weathermen. He was raised in the weatherman culture. In fact, that's who his parents were. And he worked his way through law school and became the district attorney of San Francisco to the point where he didn't want to prosecute crime at all. So 62 prosecutors, 62, either resigned or were fired because they wanted to prosecute crime. So this guy was recalled, and now they're telling this lie to everybody on the TV. Oh, they're sending a message to Democrats. I got news for you. Democrats did not like him. He was not he's a Marxist. He was not a Democratic candidate in that way. Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor, who was a district attorney in California, a very successful one, tried to talk people out of this guy. So please do not associate Democrats who give a damn about safety, who give a damn about people, who give a damn about crime, with people who don't. They're not the same. Case in point, we have testimony and hearings happening in the United States Senate. That would never happen and hasn't happened when Republicans controlled it. They don't want to hear from victims. They don't want to hear from 11-year-old girls who had to play dead. They don't want to hear the testimony of people who were the victims of a white supremacist.